So here we are, everybody. We are out at the Canada Warplane Heritage Museum on the Saturday. So this is the first day of the Skyfest 50. I'll do a quick walk around of the hangar for a little bit, get some highlights of some of the aircraft you can see here. There you can see one of their static tutors. The Lancaster here, not flying this weekend. It has to have an engine change done, so it's going to be just strictly a static walkthrough feature this weekend, unfortunately. Behind it, you can just make out the C-47. This was a World War II C-47 flown by the RCF post-war. It then went over to the Environment Canada and used for pollution checks across the Great Lakes and the ocean coasts, and was donated here a few years ago, and they went through and got a full paint job done on it to an original Canadian marking. I believe it's the original markings that this aircraft carried in the war, so that's pretty interesting. And then over here you can see one of their Yales. Here we go, the de Havilland Vampire. This is a late model Swiss Vampire. Does not represent a version flown by Canada, but they painted it up in Canadian markings. And behind it is a CF-100. This is one of the last ones that flew in the RCAF, painted up as the prototype. This took part in one of the final flybys that the CF-100s did near the end of the service. So it's here on static as well. Both of these are non-flying examples. And here we can see the Lysander, Canadian-built Lysander used for training in Canada during World War II. This one used to fly, unfortunately had an off-field landing, I believe due to some engine trouble, and is back into the restoration phase. This had actually gone through a 20-year restoration phase during the 1980s and 90s, flying for the first time in the early 2000s. And as I said, unfortunately, it's back to just a static airframe while the restoration goes on. Cessna Crane, not sure if this flies or not. It used to fly back in the day. I think it's one of the few aircraft that kind of been put to the side, requiring some work. And then across here you got some of the Yellow Wings, the Fleet Fort, Canadian-built trainer aircraft, the Fleet 21 behind there. There is a Finch Tiger Moth, all that other stuff. Over here we've got sort of the restoration corner. Over there on the back, I'll go get some shots of that a little later. Oh, there's a Cornell done up in Little Norway colors. That was a local flying school or BCATP base back in the day, trained Norwegian pilots, so they flew these aircraft in quasi-Norwegian colors. So that's done up in one of those. So back in the corner, I'll get some later on of that. That is the Bolingbroke restoration. It was supposed to fly, but they run into some serious engineering issues with the restoration, and it's going to be basically just a static aircraft, possible taxi condition. They're not sure. And then over here we've got the tracker, RCAF tracker. This is the US-built Grumman tracker. This particular one was donated to the museum from the Canadian Forces a few years ago, and they are working to get this flying again. You can see there's been quite a bit of work done on this. New cowlings, the engines are overhauled and whatnot. Last I heard, they're working on the wing fold mechanisms. The locking pins for the wing folds have had some corrosion found, so they need to get new ones machined and made up. Hopefully that happens soon. We'll get to see it flying. Here's one of their Harvards going through a repaint and a yearly overhaul, or annual some work on it. So it's still flying. You know, a couple of more months till it's ready to go. Beech 18 is over here. It had its first engine run up not too long ago, I heard, and it's going through some more final annual work. Not going to fly this weekend, but definitely still an airworthy bird. We'll take a quick walk over to this side. You're going to see some more stuff tucked in the corner over here. I believe there is the Tiger Moth and the Stearman that are both going through some restoration as well. Make sure they are going to be 100% ready to fly for the next time they need to go up. Interesting to have those. I remember seeing the Stearman fly years and years ago, but nothing too recent. But again, there's just some more stuff into the restoration. So over here we can see the Avenger. I posted some pictures of this already and some quick videos. This is a ex-RCAF Avenger, Royal Canadian Navy Avenger, that ended up being used by Force Protection Services in the firefighting and bug insect control role.
And just a quick update, having done a bit more research on this, this was not an ex-RCAF Avenger as I initially thought. It was built for the US Navy. It was then sold off as a water bomber in California, modified as a water bomber there. Then it was sold up to Force Protection Services here in Canada, and was used for a number of years there as a water bomber. It was then sold to a French outfit who had planned to ship it over to France, and when the money for that did not become available, the aircraft was brought into the fold of Warplane Heritage, and they have been spending a few years getting this up and running. So that's the correction. Apologize for the mistakes, and let's move on.
Basically waiting on paperwork to fly this again. It was out running its engines, doing some wing folds and stuff yesterday, but it'd be very interesting to see that flying soon. And a T-33. This is a static model they have here. This will be repainted in its original colors. It flew in the RCAF, which was actually a Snowbird support aircraft. So all white with the Snowbird logo on it. So again, it's static only, but it'd be cool to see. Now moving over to some of the highlights for this weekend, we have the Military Aviation Museum Spitfire. This is MJ 730 Mark 9. Very excited to see this guy again. I haven't seen him in a few years. Always nice to have a Spitfire flying in the show. So hopefully we'll get to see some flying and or some engine run-ups of that a little later in the day. But let's move on outside. We'll see what's going on out there.
And just a quick update for anybody who might end up being confused. The Spitfire ended up going mechanical and did not do any engine runs or flying. They spent most of Saturday and a little bit of Sunday, from what I understand, doing some maintenance on it.
So here we are outside. We have the Military Aviation Museum's Flugwerk Focke-Wulf 190 replica. It's using a Soviet Ash engine, which is basically a copy of the German radio that it would have used originally. And you've also got a four-bladed prop with a TU2 cowling prop. A little inaccurate, but it's still a Focke-Wulf 190. And here we have our RCAF Harvard 2 CT-156. Always nice to see the RCAF guys get out and get some exposure. So this is here as well. This is a locally owned Beech 18. I posted some pictures on this on Facebook on the Saturday of the show, which is this morning technically. So this is a late model Beech 18 with the tri-gear, late model modification they did. And this is owned by a local guy here in Hamilton apparently, local business owner. Keeps this here at the airport and flies it around for fun, so it's immaculate by the sounds of it. I'll get some shots inside here. I was told it was worth poking your head in to see inside. So without actually stepping in, I'll try to get some shots of the interior. Just beautiful, immaculate interior. If you're gonna go VIP, that's the way to go. To forget Learjets, get yourself a Beech 18. And then moving on to the rest of it, you've got the B-25, Warplane Heritage's B-25 Hot Gen. It's been doing quite a bit of flying this weekend for photo ships and everything. Might see some more as the day goes on. Firefly flew for the first time yesterday. First time in 8 years after some heavy maintenance and some rebuilding of the wings and everything. You got your two demo Hornets out there. On the right is the official demo Hornet. The left is the backup jet. Moving on over this way, you can see the Chipmunk and Tiger Moth. Both also here for the museum, doing ride programs out of the museum on a regular basis. So it's hopefully going to be flying this weekend. Harvard here, also doing the ride program. Had new taxied out in the P-51 very recently, so he might be going up in the sky. Try to get some shots of that when it goes by. And then over here on the far side, this is sort of the statics row. You might be able to see there's a Hurricane over there in the distance. Hurricane over there in the distance behind the Tiger Moth. That's a fiberglass replica. And then you got the Buffalo, the Voodoo, the 104, and the Golden Hawk Sabre. Some of this is on loan from the Warplane, from the Canada Aviation and Space Museum. Some of the stuff is owned by the museum, but this is all statics along that side. And over here you've got their new Norseman they picked up recently. So that also flies. And in behind there, the Canso. Now the Canso is going to be leaving later today. It's going out to St. Thomas. Take off around, I believe he said 10. Do a couple of passes and then make their way over to St. Thomas and go static for the day at the St. Thomas Airfest. So the only one I haven't showed you yet is tucked over in the corner there. That's the P-39. We'll try to go get some video of that here in a second. So while we're heading over to the hangar here, you can get a good look. That's the other side of that C-47. They do have the doors open and they are doing tours on inside. The inside's got seats, so you can purchase rides on that and go for your cool flights on the C-47 if you ever have an inkling for that. And over here, probably the star of the show for me, if the Mosquito doesn't show, is the Military Aviation Museum's P-39 Air Cobra. Not a lot of these still flying in the world, and this is one of the nicest ones I've seen. Beautiful shape, really cool looking plane, and I'm very glad I got to see it fly in yesterday. I don't know the history of this one. I believe this one came out of the Soviet Union and was restored. I'd have to do a bit more research on that.
And said research was completed. It was delivered to the U.S. Army Air Forces in World War II. It crashed in Australia and was recovered, stored in Australia, and then purchased and restored for the Military Aviation Museum.
That's a static Spitfire on loan from the Canada Aviation and Space Museum. So that's about it with the video. So I'm going to get some static pictures of all this stuff, and then we'll move on and we'll take some videos a little later in the day as we move on.